Good morning, everyone. I'm Steve Ross, Distinguished Professor of History at USC and Director of the USC Casden Institute. And before we start today's program, we have to acknowledge what's going on in Israel right now. And all we can say is we hope there's a quick resolution to the war with as few lives lost as possible. Thank you for joining us today, especially given what's going on in the world. But we are delighted to welcome Lissa, Associate Professor of Jewish History and Literature at University Paris 8, who will be in conversation with Dr. Hagit Arieli-Chai, USC Professor of Hebrew Language and visiting scholar at the USC Casden Institute. Professor Lissa's research focuses on the representation of animals in Jewish and Hebrew literature, and on utopia and dystopia in Jewish and Hebrew literary sources. She's recently edited Created from Animals, Thinking the Human-Animal Difference in Jewish and Hebrew Literature. She is also a frequent contributor on issues of contemporary Jewish history. And Lissa will be in conversation with Dr. Hagit Arieli-Chai. Hagit specializes in language acquisition and proficiency, with a particular emphasis on communicative competence. Dr. Chai holds Ph.D. in foreign languages and literatures, focusing on Hebrew studies from the University of Strasbourg, and currently serves as Hebrew language coordinator for HUC's Louchheim School of Judaic Studies at USC. Today's discussion will explore the tensions between utopian dreams and dystopian realities in Hebrew literature, tracing their roots from biblical narratives to contemporary works. Anna and Hagit will further examine how ancient texts, such as the stories of Eden, the Promised Land, and prophetic visions, establish foundational ideas of a perfect or failed society. Their discussion of Assaf Gavron's work will offer sharp and thought-provoking reflection on the gap between Israel's utopian aspirations and the complex realities of modern life. Anna and Hagit, just to tell you how it's going to work today, will be in conversations for about an hour, and after that, the audience will have an opportunity to engage in a question and answer session with our speakers. Please put your question in the chat functions, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen at any time during the event. And now it is my great pleasure to invite Hagit to begin today's discussion. Welcome, Hagit.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you for the warm welcome. And I'm so happy to be here, and especially today, as we all know what's happening in the world. And I promise you, I didn't choose this day randomly. So it's a great day to just delve into this journey and start with discussing, Hebrew literature. So it's not only talking about Hebrew literature as its own entity, but it's a journey, not just through texts, but through centuries of longing and imagination, trauma and renewal. And Hebrew literature is deeply rooted in a tension that between the promise and the catastrophe, between redemption and destruction. So the utopia and dystopia are not modern inventions. So in Hebrew literature, I promise you that culture and heritage, they are really embedded in its earliest text. So in this conversation, we'll explore together how this vision really shaped Jewish consciousness from, as we say, from the biblical to modern Hebrew literature. So I invite you to stay tuned, and I probably will mention some names and some authors that are worth really having a little bit of discussion about them. So what is really, when we're talking about utopia? Is it ideals, laws? Is it customs or politics? Are we talking about good place or no place? Yeah, the Greek roots, itotopos is a good place and autotopos no place, which created deliberate ambiguity. And is utopia a desirable or impossible? These are some questions to think about as we delve into the literature. Is utopia an imagined ideal society, a thought experiment that designed to critique existing social arrangements and inspire reflection of how we might and ought to live better? So utopia in the Western tradition often function as social criticism through imaginative projection. However, in Hebrew literature, it shares its critical impulse, but it grounds it very differently because it's not in a fictional elsewhere, but by remembering that the past and the anticipated future of a specific people and land. So I have kind of a roadmap when I look at this idea of utopia and dystopia. We'll start with this, our journey will start with the biblical foundation. We'll explore the covenant between God, the people, and the land in ancient scripture. Then exile and a sacred memory, how displacement shape Hebrew literary imagination and identity. The Zionist utopia, the modern vision and return and reconstruction in the late 19th and early 20th century. And modern Israeli dystopia. We live in a real world. So the contemporary critique and warning in Israeli literature. So Hebrew literature as a dialectic, it's understanding the ongoing tension between hope, despair, the past, and the present. In Hebrew literature Hebrew literature does not imagine utopia as an escape from history, and hence, it really imagined as a moral demand within history. And it's rooted in the memory and obligation and the ongoing work of justice. So Hebrew literature insists on ongoing directly with this complexity, the contradiction, and ethical challenges of lived experience. The utopian impulse in this tradition is not about constructing an ideal world elsewhere, but about transforming this world through moral action, covenant, and collective responsibility. So if we can bring slide number 5 now, I would like to take you into that place. So if Jesse can bring slide number 5. So the promised land, we are in the promised land. Is it a land as a covenant, a sacred agreement between God and the people of Israel, binding them to the land through divine promise and human faithfulness? The land is a destiny, not merely territory, but it's a fulfillment of historical purpose and the arena for collective society. Land as an ethical obligation. Possession is conditioned on justice, righteousness, and the treatment of the stranger, widow, and orphan. So in the Hebrew scripture, land is never neutral. It is charged with meaning, expectation, and moral weight. So the promised land, so the blessing and the curse in the book of Deuteronomy, there's already a blessing and a curse. Aru ata ba'ir, cursed shall you be in the city. Baruch ata ba'ir, blessed shall you be in the city. So the promise of prosperity, security, and communal flourishing with the covenant is honored. Urban and rural life alike are infused with divine favor. But the warning of collapse, deprivation, and social disintegration when the covenant is broken, the same spaces that promise blessing become site of suffering. You can choose life, uvacharta b'chaim. So the book of Deuteronomy present a stark moral choice, life or death, blessing or curse. The utopian vision is not guaranteed. It depends on human action, on the collective choice to pursue justice, kindness, and faithfulness. This is utopia, is an ethical imperative. If we bring now the prophetic vision, if Jesse can bring slide number 7, the book of Isaiah, prophetic vision, here we go. So it's an action here. They should beat their swords into plowshares. So we have here the option, the swords turn into plowshares. Instruments of violence are remade into tools of nourishment. Violence turns into cultivation. The energy, once directed towards destruction, is now redirected into growth and sustenance. War and the transformation. The prophetic vision demands radical change. Not wishful thinking, but active remaking of society. Well, Isaiah vision is among the most enduring utopian images in Hebrew literature. It imagined a world in which human ingenuity and labor are devoted not to conquest, but to creation, not to domination, but to flourishing. Crucially, this is not a passive dream. This is a prophetic call of action. So already we see that the biblical vision set us this base of thinking, of moral action, of how we can grow and flourish in the land. So we're going to skip many, many years and going into this current utopian idea that Theodor Herzl in his book Alt-Neuland brought. Well, Theodor Herzl in 1902 wrote this novel, Alt-Neuland, Old and New Land. He presents here the concept of utopian vision of the future of a Jewish state. Well, many years have passed, Jews are in exile. Now we can imagine returning to our homeland and to building a society that is based on liberal European values, technological innovation, and harmonious coexistence between Jews and Arabs. So the novel depicts a thriving cosmopolitan society with advanced infrastructure, cooperative economics, and enlightened governance. I think most of it happened. So it's a modern Jewish state, a sovereign political entity where Jews could exercise self-determination, a European liberal ideas, democracy, tolerance, equality, and secular governance, technological progress, emphasis on science, industry, and modernity, Jews and Arab coexistence, a vision of mutual benefit and shared prosperity. So that's, in a sense, the idea of this book, of this vision of the Zionist idea of returning and reconstructing a homeland. A prophetic vision or European model. Was Herzl channeling a biblical prophecy or simply projecting a contemporary European ideal into the Middle East? So there's this tension between the sacred vision and the secular politics run through the Zionist literature. So I want to kind of tap into a few of these great authors that I'll present, and then that talks a lot about the utopia and dystopia and the meaning in the Hebrew literature. So if you can bring slide number 9. So what is some of the literary influences in intertextuality? Well, one of the very prominent, author, Shai Agnon, when he talks about nostalgia and disillusionment, Agnon navigates between the shtetl, the nostalgia, and the modern alienation. His work contained both the utopian yearning and dystopian warning. That's one of the great example of like this transformation from the exile into the yearning land, and that tension that in between this nostalgic ideology and that disillusionment. In Moshe Shamir, The National Rebirth, he presents us with historical novel that construct heroic national narratives, the established utopian framework, which later questioned by dystopian ideology. And one of his books, He Walked in the Field, which is highly recommended. And also there is a film about it. And in contemporary dystopia, we read authors such as David Grossman and Orly Castelblum and others that explore the environmental collapse, the militarism, and the identity fragmentation. I want to bring another name here into this conversation, and Amos Kenan. And Amos Kenan, he wrote this book, The Road to Ein Harod, which very much a novel that was written in 1984. And Amos Kenan, a dystopian novel, depicts Israel transformed into a military dictatorship after internal political collapse. And the protagonist, he flees across the landscape that marked by checkpoints, surveillance, and fear. So the promised land became unrecognizable, a place of oppression rather than liberation. Kenan's work served as a stark warning about the fragility of democratic institutions and the danger of unchecked power. His road to En-Harod goes into like this sequence of the military dictatorship, how democratic governance replaced by authoritarian control and martial law, into this internal collapse where society is fractured from within due to ideological extremism and political violence, and then the fight across the land, where the protagonist's journey becomes a desperate attempt to escape the state of apparatus. So in this book, the promised land becomes a landscape of fear. Well, in this book in particular, Canaan Dystopia is not a science fiction. It is a political prophecy, a cautionary tale rooted in the recognition that utopian vision can curdle into their opposite when ethical vigilance is abandoned. So this is a little bit of introduction into what we're gonna delve today, and what we're gonna talk about how these literature examples features in one of the ideas that Assaf Gavron is gonna talk about in his book. And I'm gonna invite here Lissa, and to give us a little bit of what happened with the end of the 1919 to the early 2000, where another element of the climate crisis prevail on the geopolitical. And Anna, I would like to invite you to kind of make a little bit of a comment about what happened in these years and that kind of changed the geopolitical, and the En-Harod is kind of a segue into that. So if you can connect us with this novel of Amos Kenan into the 1990 and the 2000.
Of course. Thank you, Hagit, for inviting me, and thank you for this beautiful introduction and remarks, very highly interesting remarks. So yes, if one talks about utopia and dystopia in Hebrew literature, the first book to be mentioned is Aderech le'en-Harod. It's like a model somehow, which poses a different problem. As you said, it's the political military problem. Then a new generation arises around the 90s, and Assaf Gavron is part of this generation. He begins publishing during the second part of the 90s. Most of all, he's also kind of polyedric author. So not only a writer, he writes songs, and he's in a musical group, and he's a kind of computer expert. He has worked in high tech. And like Assaf Gavron, there are also other profiles like this. It's a different generation. It's more open to, let's say, world problems, not only focused on Israel, like the generation Aleph, Bet Yoshua, Amos Oz. They speak more of them for themselves than for the nation. You mentioned it above, like the author, like the prophet, in the case of Theodor Herzl. Assaf Gavron and also the others, Orly Kastelblum, Shimon Adaf, for example, they don't posit themselves as prophets. They write literature, they speak with their voice, and then everyone is invited to listen, but they do not address the nation in the traditional way we understand it in Hebrew literature. And then, like the other members of his generation, they look beyond the regional problems, and they go, obviously, in a sense, inevitably, towards the issue of climate crisis. But in the case of Assaf Gavron, anyway, he stays in Israel, and he proposes something very interesting in his both novels, which in a sense begs the question if his two novels we are about to discuss, Hydromania, which I do not translate because it's Hydromania, and Ha-melet, the cement.
And maybe a little bit of background for these two novels, the Hydromania, what is it about, and Ha-melet, yes.
Yep. Yes. And what kind of, to what literary genre do they belong? So, background, Hydromania, published in 2012. The main character is Maya, and she's married to Ido. She is an engineer, and he is an engineer, and she deals with finances. She's an accountant, a gifted, extremely gifted accountant. We are in a future that has all the characters of dystopia. Both novels, Hydromania and Ha-melet, takes place in 2066, 67. They both. In 2066, starting from the current situation, Assaf Gavron speculates what may be, what the future may bring. The future brings the progressive fall of the power at an international level, the progressive fall of the United States, and the progressive arising of a new power that is Russia. As far as the world is concerned, climate crisis is at its peak. Now, in the Middle East and especially in Israel, they fight for the clouds and they fight for the rain, meaning that it rains only a few days per year, and the days it rains are a prerogative of water multinationals. They decide when there will be rain and when the people can get water. Economics is capitalistic, aggressive capitalism. There are water multinationals that they do not starve, but they make people thirsty people, so to speak. And they are omnipotent. They are even more powerful and richer than the states. The water multinational can finance Ido project. The state cannot. The state is not, is almost nothing. As far as the local question is concerned, and here Assaf Gavron pays homage to Amos Keinan, so to speak, because it takes somehow where Amos Keinan left it, only he foresees the falling of the state of Israel, brutally said. The Palestinian state is founded, and then after, in a little while, the Palestinian state arms itself, aggresses Israel, and erodes Israel, whose territory is, when the story begins, reduced to Caesarea, basically, and also to the village, another homage to Amos Keinan, to the village of Harod, where Maya takes shelter with her family. And from there on, the story will develop. Maya will have to cope with Ido's absence. Ido vanishes at the beginning of the novel. He's not there anymore. She's left pregnant. The water of Ido, his enterprise, he wanted to provide the people with more affordable and good power and good water, has failed. Multinational have taken it into pieces, basically. So she's poor, pregnant, and alone at the beginning of the story. And the story develops around the solving of the mystery of his vanishing and how Maya copes with her situation. In Ha-melet takes place in 2000. Is written in 2000.
Ha-melet, I just want to interject here and add something about En Harod, because there's a particular idea here that the author is using En Harod, and historically I want to bring into some points here about En Harod, because with the novel of Amos Keinan that talks about Haderech le'en Harod, because En Harod was actually some sort of, it began as a utopian idea of really Ben Chavrei, all the members of the Hebrew Brigade, were the collecting of all the kibbutzim together, unifying all the kvutzot, all the groups together into one big kibbutz, okay? And En Harod was like this, the first big, the labor brigade that was founded by Joseph Trumpeldor that created it. So it was like a symbol of unity. And then there was this big crisis that happened there in 1952, because this was with the very famous a very famous political split that happened between two political entities in 1952. So we're talking about that place, and in particular, it's chosen in the novel to show that this is a place where you aspire to create this utopian ideology with the kibbutz, but then here comes this political split that broke everything. So there is a reason why in this, in Amos Kenan and also in Assaf Gavron, the Ein Charod is mentioned there. So please take us now into the next novel with Ha-melet, and let's connect these dots together, please.
Yeah. In Ha-melet, we are still in the Middle East only. There is no state of Israel anymore, because in 2050, after a great Magifah, after a great epidemic, and after what Assaf Gavron labels as sauna gas, it's unclear what was it, but it was a sauna. Anyway, the Middle Eastern states, all of them, have agreed to form a Middle Eastern Union. So peace is achieved. Middle Eastern is unified in several great zones, poorer or richer, it depends. And furthermore, and this is the most interesting part, perhaps, this new Middle Eastern Union is based on a new economic system, post-capitalism. They decide to leave aside all the capitalist economy, and they decide to go into a system that is called post-cap, meaning that the great industrial system are the property of the states, and the shareholders are the employees of the firms, even if they were multinationals, so to speak. And there are also small individual enterprises that can go on, but no one is allowed to make more profit than a certain amount that has been decided, and no one is allowed to possess more than one apartment or house. So everything is divided equally. We can see here is the division of riches is a problem that has given much thought to even to European culture in the modern age, and in the Utopia of More there was also a division of riches and therefore peace. Only the point is in Ha-melet, in which Assaf Gavron plays with Ha-melet and Hamlet. At the center of Ha-melet, there is the Mishpacha, this family, the El-Aluf family, coming from Dimona, Mizrahim, so to speak, even though it is very much in the background, but they are Mizrahim. They come from a poor situation. And then one day, Amram El-Aluf, which is the father of the family, and the founder of the firm, the cement, discovers a kind of cement that is very economic, very practical, and this cement becomes the standard material used in the whole Middle Eastern Union. But with the Middle Eastern Union, the riches of the family are cut off by the post-cap system, meaning that the family that is the proprietor, the owner of the whole multinational, because now it's a world multinational, this family must give up the majority of its shares, and they can keep only 25%. They can have only one property, and in the family there is a split. Amram El-Aluf, which is the father of the family, agrees with post-cap, because post-cap gives the humans, the people, freedom of choice. They can choose either they work because they want to work, because they choose to work, or they live from a universal salary. So working is not anymore a necessity. It's a matter of choice. And Amram El-Aluf is in favor of it. His son, Ami, is in favor also of it. But the mother and the uncle, like in Hamlet, are against it. And the story begins when Ami is called home because his father is ill. The father lays unconscious, and he only has the force to whisper to his son, Ra'al, poison. They poisoned it. Who poisoned him? Well, the son, the uncle poisoned him. It's like Ha-melet, Telkel. Only the problem is not the kingdom, but the ownership of the firm. So the uncle tries to take the firm from Ami and take the control of the firm in the limits of the post-cap system. And once the stage is set of the post-cap, Assaf Gavron starts into the exploration of the different reactions and different possibilities the post-cap gives, and in a study of human nature, which in a sense rejoins also Hydromania, because also in Hydromania there is a study of the nature of the many characters, what they will do, how they will react to the situation, meaning their capitalism and climate crisis.
So it seems to me that when Assaf writes this novel, there is a thematic here that he really uses the metaphor of, the water scarcity or the cement, yes, as a metaphor for some sort of political control. Do you think this is what was intended because it serves as a critique, as a criticism? What's your opinion about it?
Well, in Hydromania, it's clear who has the control of the water has the power. Multinationals control the water, so they have the power. Ido tries to counter the multinational, but it's like David against several Goliath. It's impossible, and Maya acknowledges it in the end. So yes, it's about power, and it's about how people will deal with this extremely aggressive capitalist system in a climate crisis. In the post-cap novel, it's different because post-cap depends on human generosity. How you choose to give up a part, you must accept that you must give up some of your riches if you ever have any. But then how is the human defined? Because for Ami, for example, working is something he loves, something that defines him, something he doesn't want to give up because he likes it. Ophelia, of course, his fiancée, liked to have these pet shops because through the pet shop she could help people who were alone, who were lonely. And also the post-cap leaves free time, the accursed leisure, Arur Apanaya Arur, Assaf Gavron calls it. There are some people who cannot deal with the accursed leisure. They don't know what to do with their time, and they get depressed, they get lost. Or there are those who are not generous and refuse it, like the uncle who wants the whole firm and is ready to kill his brother for it. So it depends.
So there is really a role here of idea that it goes beyond just, the political, but there's also the idea that of science and technology that is embedded here in the novels. Because what's now bringing both novels that is weaving this thread in technology and in science, which brings us back into the idea that the founding of, reconstructing, the modern Israeli society based on, technology. So Assaf really brings that in, but there is a lot of criticism in his novels. I would want you to maybe take us into what really Assaf Gavron is criticizing here. In particular, although he's bringing this innovation, he's bringing these ideas that could bring into a redemption from what we are maybe bound into currently, a political regime. So if you can a little bit explore that with us.
I really enjoyed reading both Hydromania and Ha-melet, especially Hydromania, because I found that Assaf Gavron uses technology a little like Philip K. Dick does. Technology in Hydromania is almost magic. It makes possible things that are nowadays impossible, because there is this one wonderful chip that goes under the skin in the human arm, and from the chip you can do everything. You don't even need to pay if you go to a shop, because the chip registers what you take and the shop takes the money from your account. Then there is the reverse. There is the control, because the chip gives control to the state, to the police, who can find you everywhere they want, because you are always tracked. A problem we face also nowadays with our phones. So there is the reverse, and there is another reverse. The more expensive the chip, the more technologically developed it is, which means that there is still a difference. Who can pay for the more developed chips, who cannot? In the post-cap, the cement that is at the center of it's the great innovation. In Ha-melet, we have a bullet train called Uzi, which I found very ironic, very fun somehow. But the cement is the scientific innovation discovered by chance, by Amram El-Alouf, by accident. And then the cement becomes a standard to build. But what do we do with this cement? Shall we leave it the sole propriety of the Amram El-Alouf family, or do we share it? Amram El-Alouf was for sharing it. So there is less criticism, because the post-cap already develops the criticism against the capitalism that was present in the first novel.
Yes,
but there is a problem, a moral problem.
Mm-hmm. So there is a moral problem, and I think this is what Assaf Gavron is also wanting us to really understand, that in both novels there is a moral problem here, and they're talking a lot about this relationship with in the characters. So maybe we can explore a bit the relationship of the protagonist in the novel of Ha-melet.
Okay. In Ha-melet, we have this great family, and we have a great split in the family. Amram El-Alouf and his son Ami, who like their work. Amram El-Alouf is someone also who has a good sense of opportunity. He can develop a great industrial project. He's a great manager. Let's say like this, but he's not greedy, he's generous. So he is ready to accept the post-cap. Ami is also ready to accept the post-cap, even though he's younger. He's 45 at the moment when the event, when the story begins. Then there are characters who cannot live in idleness, like Odelia. Then his fiancée, but they got a breakup because the post-cap regime poses another problem. The couple, Ido Odelia, functioned because they both had a work they loved, and this work they loved defined them, gave them a balance and a sense, a purpose in life. Once Odelia loses her shop because the other friend she was working with dies because of cancer. It's a pure accident, and she cannot deal with the accounting of the shop. Once she loses this shop, which she must not have, but which she wants to have, then she falls into depression. And this affects the couple. So this is another question Ami raises in his head. Personal work affects personal life. There is a circuit between the two of them. And once the balance is lost, the couple is broken. So they keep loving each other, but they cannot stay together because they have lost somehow the balance between them.
So it seems like they both novels portray like competing visions of Israeli identity. Because in both novels, we can see that there is some sort of a vision of what's Israeli identity. And the fact that, Assaf chooses Dimona is not a coincidence, because I don't know if many knows, but Dimona in the south, a place of very labor. I mean, people blue collar, society, pretty impoverished, and obviously Mizrahim, only, mainly Mizrahim. And so there is some sort of a planted idea here to choose this place, because there's some sort of also a criticism about the Israeli society and about what it tells about the Israeli identity. So did you see it, that thread to the novel? Can you elaborate a little bit about that, how Assaf really portrays that in his novel?
Yes, the story, it's the family mythology. He calls like this. He calls it like this. They were Mizrahim, they were poor when they got Baaretz. They got to Dimona, a poor place. There was almost nothing, only a har with full of avak.
Dust.
Dust.
Very dusty place.
Full of dust, people, and so on and so forth. But Amram El-Aluf changed the
you mean sandstone. I think you meant sandstone, a lot of sandstone there, yes?
Sand, yeah, plenty of sand. Basically nothing, poverty, no hope. Amram El-Aluf builds a firm that gives work to people, and the Dimona economy gets better, and the people can work, and Dimona becomes a more developed city with houses affordable for everyone. So yes, there is it's not anymore a criticism. It's not really at the center of the novel. It's at the origin of the novel. This idea of redemption of this Mizrahi family is the starting point of the novel.
Excellent, yes. Well, it seems like that he brings it into, because it functions, the novel function as constructing belonging. Do we belong here, or we don't belong here? Are we part of this fabric of society, or we're not part of this fabric of society? So it seems like this novel are maybe even a warning, gives a warning. This text maybe gives us a warning into what the future, what's up in this future of this, marginalized cities and society. Do you think that's part of what it was intending to bring us as the reader?
I think there is an idea of redemption, because this Mizrahi family becomes a world concern. Yes, the problem, I think, is the fact of accepting the limits. The whole novel turns around the fact that there are some limits you must accept. Limit to what you can possess, limit to the riches you can have. One reflection Ami does after he quarreled with the whole family and runs away and takes refuge in the north of Israel into an hotel all alone, leaving even his beloved work, is the fact of accepting the limits. Can we accept these limits? And he begins working on himself, accepting small limits in his everyday life. And in the end of the novel, he will be able to accept even a bigger limit, but I don't want to spoil the novel. I'm not sure about it. What do you say?
Well,
I don't know.
There's curiosity here, because I think this novel really brings this angle that maybe not that many readers are, especially for translated novel from Hebrew, are quite aware of it. And I think there's a beautiful way for a Gavron style to really thread this idea of utopia and dystopia in this novel as using the metaphor of, in the case of Ha-melet, the cement, and in the case of Hydromania, the water. So these are used as a metaphor, but I wanted a little bit go back into this metaphor, why you think in particular, maybe it chooses the metaphor of the water in particular in Israel. And that has its own significance, which ties into our own existence in Israel. And it maybe even we can tie it into what I've started this whole conversation with the foundation in the biblical text. So think about in the Hydromania how the metaphor of the water is really tying into the promised land.
Yeah, well, generally speaking, they say, not me, but they say that in Middle East, a glass of water can become more expensive even than oil, because a glass of water can be at the origin of geopolitical conflicts, very meaningful. Finding the water, well, I don't know. I'm teaching also a course about the history of Hebrew cinema, and the first scenes that are turned about the kibbutz life at the beginning of the centuries, some of them are focused on the search for the water and on finding the water, and the great feast is made once they found it. So water is one of the issues of that lies. I mean, that is one of the features even of the Zionist utopia. If we want to make the desert flourish, of course, we must deal with irrigation.
We're measuring water
and
by... Yes, the water are measured.
And mine back in Eret. And mine back in Eret.
Yeah. Water is Kinneret is the Sea of Galilee. So yeah, water.
And there is also another thing which I really liked about Hydromania. At a certain moment when Maya has found shelter in Harod at her family's place, she begins researching to develop a new water system, and she takes inspiration from the Nabatean system of collecting. Nabatean, yeah. So she takes her inspiration, she takes the model. I mean, she says that the water collecting system basically from the Nabatean time hasn't changed. It's always the same. So she takes inspiration really from even a pre-biblical civilization and reworks it, remodernizes it into the water collecting system and purification system she develops in general. She develops this patent she sells afterwards, and she develops this system specifically for the Harod village in order to preserve it a little from the capitalist water distribution system. But she takes this inspiration from the Nabatean. This is highly poetical for me. So yes, water from the Nabatean until nowadays, and 2066.
Yeah, so the water is definitely a central theme in our existence, in our pre-state of Israel into current, and it's used as we are really dealing with this transition between the capitalism and the socialism, between what's the ideal place. So it seems like Assaf is navigating in his entire novels between this tension that, there's elements of the novel is really about the human character and nature. So it's not in isolation. So it really brings this human character and into the nature, into really connecting the land and what will sustain this land. But there's a lot of criticism of how are these societies actually living nowadays, how the society functions. So in these two novels, there's a reflection for the human nature, and in this sense, they reconnect though with the theme. And I want to see if you can maybe talk a little bit about how Assaf is using the language also in the novels to stress this point, to really emphasize this point, what language. And I think you mentioned that you might have some of the maybe lines that you want to share, because the language is really important, and I know some of it is really lost in the translation, but maybe you can share some of the, if you have a quote or two to share about the language that Assaf is using in these novels, if you do have.
Well, you know, yeah, utopia in itself, utopia and dystopia demand new words, because utopia and dystopia are two words created and fashioned for the occasion, so to speak. So we begin with the beginning. Utopia is a word fashioned by Thomas More in his time. So yes, utopia needs a whole new vocabulary. In the works of Assaf Gavron, we have plenty of examples. We have the Aisha, which is kind of car, a futuristic car that is called the Aisha. You have the Uzi bullet train in Ha-melet. You have the names of this new irrigation system, the Gigi, etc. You have a new name even for money. Money in Hydromania is called, I'm not sure about the pronunciation, Kuai, Kuay. So Assaf Kuai, yeah. Assaf Gavron fashions a new vocabulary in this utopia. You have an alzag in Ha-melet. Alzag is, I asked him because I didn't know how to translate it. Actually, is this communication system so that that the face of people appear by holograms into thin air somehow. It's a futuristic system. You press on a button and you see the person you are talking to coming out on a screen into thin air. So there is a whole lot of new vocabulary. And then there is also Assaf's style of writing that is rich. It's new in the sense that it is so rich with English words and with English constructions that lay beneath the Hebrew. I don't know if you paid attention, especially in Ha-melet, I could detect many things that are even translated in English, transliterated into Hebrew. Game changer. The cement of Amram El Alouf became a game changer, for example. Really game changer. So it's, I enjoyed it very much.
So you definitely infuse a lot of terminology, a lot of words that are in English.
Yeah.
And so, but are there any reference to, there's any biblical references in this novel? Is there any biblical references? Does he use any? I'm just wondering, because when we talk about utopia and dystopia, when we talk about this duality, and when the writers are using this ongoing exchange from, you know, the two opposites, it's always interesting to see if in the writing they also bring the old and new, you know, as we spoke about duality. So I'm wondering if there's any places where Assaf is using that in their intertextuality in his novel.
Well, I think that in a sense, if this society of the post-cap future makes me think about a kind of Gan Eden. I mean, you can work if you want to. If you don't work, you have this universal salary that really resembles to the fruit trees in the Gan Eden. You pluck the fruit and you're fed.
Does he use Eden? Does he use that, or he refers to that?
He does not use it clearly, literally, but in a sense it brings it to mind. Only in the Gan Eden, humans were out of history because they enter history when they get out of Gan Eden. In Ha-melet, they are in the stream of history anyway. They must cope with history, but with some protections, some Gan Eden-like protections. They are protected. They will never fall into poverty. There will always be a fruit tree under the form of universal salary to give them a living.
Yeah. So I think there's some core tension that Assaf really brings into here. There is sort of like this centrality and the periphery. There is the socialism, the capitalism. There's some sort of religious also tension here that is maybe even kind of drawing to this some attention. And obviously the national rebirth, because every time there is something to resolve or to solve, is basically to bring this rebirth again, to really thrive to a better society. So there's almost this ongoing political reality that Assaf is wanting us to really pay attention to as this it presents us with these two books. And I know that you had a little bit more of a contact with Assaf Gavron, and you invited him to some of talks in Paris. And I'm just wondering if you see, knowing him a little bit, if you can share a little bit about his biography, what brought and what led him really in particular to focus his writing and these thematic ideas.
Hydromania was, I think, his own individual idea, but the post-cap novel is a part of a project related to the Van Leer Institute, and there were 4 writers who each wrote a short novel who takes place into a post-cap world. And the writers, Assaf told me, met on Zoom during the Magefa, apropos, during the epidemic, and they built this post-capitalist world with the rules, with the technology, with the limits, and then each of them, Shimon Adaf was part of the project, and then each of them wrote his or her own novel, but they agreed upon the main rules together. So it's a collective project related to the Van Leer Institute and to a professor who hosted them.
Okay, now interesting. So it's obviously, you know, COVID time brought people together, and it was also at a time that as unknown and chaos, and feeling that we're running into like this maybe a dystopian and utopian, maybe some reality. So it was a perfect time for writing this. But there's a lot of tension that I think Assaf wants to also bring in his novel about this globalization and the globalism, and the Jewish particularity. Yes, because we see that it's very much tied into what us as Jews are obligated to. So even when his dreams or his hypothetical ideas comes in, it's very much tied into the core of the Jewish, you know, ethos. I would be interested to hear from you if you kind of see that from your conversation with him, that you can really see that there's beyond that idea of globalism, there is also the idea that of Jewish particularity here that he brings in his novels.
I think there is, and I think it takes a new embodiment in Maya, especially, because Maya does not share the fanatic fight against the whole capitalism, but in the end she understands how to be pragmatic, because she puts forward her love for Ido, her love for her daughter. She will become a mother, and she takes full responsibility for it. And the whole researches she does about the new water purification system, it's her taking responsibility for her daughter, which is, I mean, the mother in Judaism is at the center in a certain sense, no? And also she takes responsibility for her own community, not for the whole planet. Yes, of course, her project benefits everybody, but the project also benefits specifically her small community in Harod who has helped her to develop the project. There is a certain balance. I mean, plenty of writers wrote about the problem of the individual versus the collective. Maya strives and finds a balance between her aspiration, her life, and the collective of the Harod village and her family that hosts her. So yeah, I think in a sense it's deeply Jewish.
I think the responsibility thread here is what I am going to bring you back into, because when we talk about the Hebrew literature and when it's talking about the memory and the obligation and the ongoing work for justice and what's right, what the moral justice is. So we going back into when we create an ideal world, it's really not elsewhere. It's really here in this land of Israel, and the water is particular, the particularity of water. It's really about transforming this place into a place that is balanced and prosper, and through moral action, to taking the responsibility and the collective responsibility. And that's kind of really ties back into where we started. So Anna, is there any additional thing that you would like to share with us about these two novels that we haven't discussed? And maybe we talked a little bit about identity, but not so much, but maybe there's something about identity, which it's always an identity is a negotiation. It's an ongoing reshaping and shaping who we are. But is anything in particular that you would like to share with us about any of the characters in these novels and that relates to the identity?
I think, yeah, identity, personal identity in both novels, moral identity, is defined in the dialectic between treason and fidelity, because in both novels there is a traitor. In Hydromania there is a kind of Shakespearean traitor, which is called the Dagi, the fish. He betrays Ido and is almost dead because of Dagi, but he manages to escape. He tries to seduce Maya. Ido is really a sort of Iago left on the loose in Hydromania. And then there are the faithful characters, the loving characters, like Maya. In Ha-melet, which has Ha-melet as intertext also, there is also a treason because the uncle betrays his own brother, who has made him rich after all, and poisons his brother. And Ami remains faithful to his father and to his approach to the world, let's say, while the uncle betrays it, and the mother with the uncle. The mother is also greedy, although Gavron remains a little, well, not so trenchant about the mother like in Shakespeare, in order to avoid the Oreste course. So it's between Ami and his uncle, basically, with the mother in between. She's also a traitress, but yeah. So yes, there is a very personal identity that is built around treason and fidelity and love at the center, basically.
So I think the
collectivity of the spouse, of the son, yeah.
And the love also is, as we transfer this love into the love of the place, the land, the sources, yes. So I want to go back a little bit into how the land function here as a resource, but also as a sacred promise, because we are talking about this resource and a sacred or source, a promise. I'm sorry, and do you think that this sense of belonging of the character plays here as they feel that they are part of this covenant of promise, or is it a matter of pragmatism, of survival?
I think they have a covenant, they have an engagement to the values, to fidelity, and as I said, to love. Then Maya has also progressively develops an engagement towards Harod, because her discovering the Gigi brings about also help, brings help also to her, brings water to her village of Harod. Ami says that one of the greater merits of his own father is these great building projects that have developed Dimona and have made it a different, more richer, more prosperous city than it was in the past. So yes, a devotion to the land in this sense, a fight against poverty, for example. Yeah.
So it feels that these contemporary writers such as Assaf Gavron, they exposed all these cracks, in the utopian dream, in what we project and aspire. And Assaf Gavron, in this novel Hydromania, imagined that the future of Israel, where water is privatized and society is fragmented. That's how he kind of see that. I mean, water will be privatized, the society is fragmented. So his work questions the technological progress, the capitalism, and the environmental crisis. So we talked about all these three, yes, the technological progress, the capitalism, and the environmental crisis, which we are, in a sense, it's encapsulated now in this novel and in Israel, but it really spreads beyond the borders of Israel. So dystopia really becomes a mirror reflecting of present anxieties. So we worry about and what we are really dealing and coping with. So modern Hebrew dystopia, we often explore that all this political fragmentation and the environmental catastrophes, identity crisis, and the tension of, between them, between the globalization and our particularity and our responsibility. And it seems that this novel really brings us maybe a window into critically think about all these issues. I invite the audience now to, if you have any reflection or any thoughts, any questions, maybe that will be a good time to start open the conversation with the audience. And Steve, if you want to see if there's some reflections, some questions that we can start answering.
Right. Well, first, I would say to the audience, if you have a question, a few people have, put it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to get to them. Two things that the audience have asked is, and this is something we can do at the Casden, to post. First of all, will this be available? And the answer is yes. We will post this on our Casden website. And forget about having to memorize the website. Just type in Casden Institute, and it'll pop up. We would also love it if one of you or both of you, people would love to have posted a list of all the books that were mentioned today, and which one of those books are in English, because we have quite a few listeners today, and I think a bunch of them certainly read Hebrew, but many of them will want to know what's in English. So again, if you can post that, we will share recordings. We will share these lists for you. Just go to the Casden. While we're waiting for more questions.
I did mention a couple of authors. All the ones we mentioned, they're all translated to English, and I will provide this list after the talk. Assaf Gavron, novels are translated. Oh no.
Ha-melet, I don't think Ha-melet is translated.
Hydromania, I think, yes.
I must check if Hydromania has been translated into German and Italian, surely. I'm not sure about English.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
one question. What is the name of the institute that hosted the 4 persons who created the post-cap rules?
The Van Leer Institute in Jerusalem.
Van Leer. The Van Leer. Mm-hmm.
Van Leer. Mm-hmm. Okay. Another question. How does the name Ha-melet translate to English?
Oh, Ha-melet?
Ha-melet, yes.
Ha-melet. Ha-melet, cement, yes.
Not cement.
Cement.
All right.
The whole idea of the Ha-melet cement and the factory that is actually in Dimona is in particular because also is a place that Dimona has only sand and sandstone, and that's a very industrial place. Besides the other things that I don't want to mention, and this is quite classified about Dimona, and people probably understand that. But I think the idea that this whole factory, is in Dimona to create the cement is because it's a very peripheral and there's nothing there, and it's a very impoverished place, and which also in times a lot of immigrants communities are in Dimona, so providing them a place to work, and because of also the sandstorm that is often happening there. Yeah, so cement is Ha-melet, this cement, yes.
Are there a couple of other contemporary writers you would recommend to us, those who are translated into English?
Yeah, so I would say that Orly Kastelblum, Dolly City. I don't need to translate that. Dolly City, yes. So here's this is a great novel. Orly Kastelblum actually is very dystopian and satire, novel that really breaks the whole myth of Israeli motherhood, and this book is translated to many languages. I mean, Orly really won this great recognition among one of the most influential novel in contemporary Hebrew literature. So there's a great style that she brings here as a monologue, and it divides into 4 different sections about her life and how she presents the Israeli dystopian that the home and the city are not anymore a safe place. And this book of Dolly City really examined this relationship between mothers and family, and using a lot of dark humor and breaking a lot of these, cliches. So I invite you to really check this. This one recommendation. Another one I would definitely recommend also David Grossman, his novels, and one great one. I mean, he has many of them, but סוס אחד נכנס לבר, which is one horse came to the bar, is an exactly a one read, you can't stop, and once you start, you all go on a stage with this character. Is really as a stand-upist, talks about his trauma, and in a very humoristic way, yet present us with his entire trauma of in his as being serving in the army. So yes, these are 2 recommendations. I can go on and on. And I mentioned, actually, wait a second, I did mention Moshe Shamir. Definitely, this is, I mentioned a couple of them. So I would say that Moshe Shamir, He Walked in the Fields, is a great dystopian and utopian novel that really talks about this framework of that, how we construct this heroic, national narrative, but in what price. And there's the negotiation of that character between, the idealistic, serving the country, and this tension and this tension of creating this balanced society. So that's one of them. And Aderech Le'en Charod, the Amos Kenan, the road to En Charod, and as I said, the En Charod, and these are translated. And I said that there are also movies about these 2 novels, and you can find a lot of it in the Jerusalem archive if you want to watch these movies, and that's accessible there.
Another question came in. Have you heard of, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, Dragon's Prophecy, and what do you think?
Dragon, I'm sorry, which one?
Dragon, D-R-A-G-O-N, Dragon.
Oh, Dragon Prophecy?
Yeah.
Not sure. let's say, what's the Hebrew? I wonder if it's no, I don't think so. No, it's not the one I
And
meant.
let's
Okay.
go to another question. Is there any author that addresses how to manage a balance between utopia and dystopia?
Ha. Anna, do you want to suggest something if I suggest something?
I think that the subject runs like a subterranean river in the whole Hebrew literature, if you want. And sometimes this river comes up like Amos Kenan and like the most recent generation. But if you have this dualism in mind, you can go back to plenty of authors. To begin with, I would say Agnon, the Greek classic. If you go back to Agnon, to some texts of Agnon with Utopia and Dystopia in mind, you find that this is at the core of some of his novels. Oreach Natal Alun, A Guest for the Night. It's also a discussion of the proper location of the Utopia. Is the Utopia located really in the land of Israel? Could it be located instead in the land beyond the Sambation? There is a chapter in Oreach Natal Alun that deals with the subject. So with the whole idea of the proper location of Zionist utopia. Is really utopia in the land of Israel afterwards in the 45 novel Tmol Shirshom? Isn't it dangerous to stay, in the land of Israel? Utopia and Dystopia. For example, the first works unpublished and untranslated of Aleph Bet Yehoshua, the Ketuvim Genusim, I came back to them very recently. They deal greatly with the issue of utopia and dystopia. Then, with the maturity, Yehoshua left a little the subject aside and went towards his most renowned novels. But he also experimented with it in this Ketuvim Genusim. So plenty of the point. Sometimes you must go back and reread with the idea in mind because it escaped attention, and at least my attention when I read it was focused on something else.
I have a question, which is, have there been any practical responses to Gavron's literary work? And I'm thinking of an American author, Edward Bellamy, who wrote Looking Backward, 1887 to 2000, where Julian West falls asleep in 1887 and wakes up in the year 2000. And what he's discovered is what many in that point of time would have considered a utopia, where everyone, like Gavron, is paid a universal salary. It doesn't matter what you work at, whether you're cleaning floors or whether you're a brain surgeon, everyone gets the same money. And after a certain amount of years, everyone gets to retire from government service and do whatever they want to do. One of the responses to the book was the creation of literally hundreds of Bellamy clubs throughout America, trying to take this vision and put it into effect. It never happened, but I'm curious, has Gavron's work created any kind of response, organized response, trying to take some of those ideas and put them into practice?
I'm not sure it did also because, my generation is a little behind it. But I think the post-cap dream was the dream of my parents' generation, the 70s. That was the basic idea. Now we will go it beyond the capitalism, and technology will allow us time and leisure to do whatever we want to do. Because in the post-cap of Gavron's novel, you must not work, and you can choose not to work, and you always receive the universal salary. The universal salary is not connected to the work. So even if you don't work, you get the universal salary. It's different. It's the old dream the 60s and the 70s generation dreamt, in a sense. So is it possible to make it true? I wouldn't know. I don't know.
Well,
be
it
honest.
seems like it's tying it into also what's happening now with all the startups and all these, companies that are these young, innovative minds are creating this, companies and selling them, and then they do the exit. So there is kind of that all of a sudden that I'm retired at the age of, and I made the exit. So it's kind of alluding into this exit that a lot of them are. And I think with our previous conversation where Doug Geffen talked also about something similarly of Mrs. Lillenblum Cloud Factory, which he alludes into this, oh, here I'm making this startup also in the desert and creating this illusion that I can just, find life and in a new place and don't have to work anymore. So I think there's some sort of an illusion into that, into what this globalization also brings us with this new generation. And definitely when looking at this is always that tension between this utopia and dystopia, where early writers in Jewish, in Hebrew literature brought this aspiration for that place as because it was not there yet. It was a dream. So obviously in Agnon, you would see it a lot because there's always this nostalgic and there's always this idea. But once I think we started in the 1950s, we already start seeing all that tension. And I think Amos Kenan, in his novel, you would see that in B'derech le'en charod, because you do see the element of utopia, very much so, yet also that's what's happened to us because we're fragmented here in the society. Yeah. Yes. Any other? And I will write all the list of novels that we mentioned here, and I'm not sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anna, you have any last thoughts?
Well, I wanted to thank you, Hagit, and you all for organizing it and inviting me.
Well, we would like to thank our speakers today, Anna and
Obviously.
Hagit, for such a fantastic discussion of Assaf Gavron's work and the sharp contrast that he poses between utopian aspirations that characterize Israel and the reality of modern life and all its complexities. And most of all, I want to thank our audience for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing you again at our future Casden events. Thank you again, Anna and Hagit, and all of you have a wonderful afternoon. And let's hope at our next event, peace will have descended on the Middle East and maybe greater democracy in the Middle East on all sides. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Anna.